Again, we unapologetically wanted this conversation to be different, to cover as much as we could in terms of subject matter. So Dwayne Wickham's question now will be answered first by Senator Obama, 30 seconds, and we'll cover a lot more ground. Thank you.
Okay, please stay with me on this one. According to FBI data, blacks were roughly 29% of persons arrested in this country between 1996 and 2005. Whites were 70% of people arrested during this period. Yet at the end of this 10-year period, whites were 40% of those who were inmates in this country, and blacks were approximately 38%. What does this data suggest to you?
That the criminal justice system is not colorblind. It does not work for all people equally. And that is why it's critical to have a president who sends a signal that we are going to have a system of justice that is not just us, but is everybody. And, you know, this is something that I've got a track record working on at the state level where a lot of the criminal justice issues come up. That's why I passed racial profiling legislation at the state level. That's why I passed legislation to make sure that we didn't have wrongful convictions. But it requires some political courage because oftentimes you are accused of being soft on crime when you deal with these issues.
Thank you, sir. I love you, but I'm trying to keep this moving. Yes, sir, Congressman.
As president, I'll have an attorney general who is going to be sensitive to the very issues that you raised. First of all, we need to seek to end mandatory minimums. We know who's serving those mandatory minimums. Second, we need to have the emphasis with respect to drug offenses on rehabilitation, not incarceration. And third, as president, I'll do everything I can to end the federal death penalty, which I've already introduced legislation for in the past, because we need to have an approach that recognizes the discrimination which exists in our justice system.
Senator Gravel.
Is it a surprise to anybody in this room that if you don't have any money, you don't get any justice? Is that a surprise to you all? My gracious. The only way you're going to get justice is to turn around and empower yourselves to become lawmakers so you can change the system. And there's no thought of really changing the system today. It's politics as usual.
Senator Dodd.
Well, I agree. I think the mandatory minimum sentencing has been a disaster. I'm a strong supporter of Charlie Rangel's efforts here to eliminate the distinction between crack cocaine and powder cocaine. That'll have a big difference in terms of who actually goes to jail in this country. And then obviously as well, we need to have a Justice Department that is not going to be politicized, as we've watched this one, with U.S. attorneys who do the political work rather than doing the justice's work in our country. As president, I will insist upon that. I'm sure the rest of my colleagues would here. We'll get better justice with Democrats in the White House.
Senator Clinton.
In order to tackle this problem, we have to do all of these things. Number one, we do have to go after racial profiling. I've supported legislation to try to tackle that. Number two, we have to go after mandatory minimums. You know, mandatory sentences for certain violent crimes may be appropriate, but it has been too widely used, and it is using now a discriminatory impact. Three, we need diversion, like drug courts. Nonviolent offenders should not be serving hard time in our prisons. They need to be diverted from our prison system. We need to make sure that we do deal with the distinction between crack and powder cocaine. And ultimately, we need an attorney general and a system of justice that truly does treat people equally, and that has not happened under this administration.
Senator Biden.
As you well know, the bulk of the inequity is at the state level, not at the federal level, number one. Number two, we need diversion out of the system. I'm the guy that wrote the drug court legislation that is in the law right now. Number three, you have to eliminate the disparity between crack and powdered cocaine. I've introduced legislation to do that, 1-to-1, no difference. And number four, you have to find a way in which you insist from a federal level the states, in fact, apply the law equally. They don't through the Speedy Trial Act. The states, 650,000 people coming out of jail in the state prisons, 300,000 will come out addicted from the prison this year.
Thank you, Senator Biden. Governor.
Carved at the marble top of the U.S. Supreme Court, it says equal justice under law. This country has had 200 years, yet today, 68% of those in jail are minorities. In your own book, Tavis, you say that 1 out of 3 African-American males spend some time in jail.
That is wrong, and what we need is a strategy to deal with poverty. Expand the earned income tax credit, increase the minimum wage, have a living wage in this country, find ways to expand child care, find ways also to let Americans join a union. This will not only give them more health care, but more accountability and the ability to protect themselves.
Thank you, Governor. Senator Edwards?
Travis, everything that's been said is correct. You know, changing mandatory minimum, changing the disparity between crack and powder cocaine, having a system that's fair. If you're African American, you're more likely to be charged with a crime. If you're charged with a crime, you're more likely to be convicted of the crime. If you're convicted of the crime, you're more likely to get a severe sentence. There is no question that our justice system is not colorblind. But can we also create an infrastructure for success for those who are charged and convicted for the first time, so that we help them with drug counseling, job training, education, help them get them back into the community with some chance of changing their lives?
Thank you, sir.